So, Rob, how come you live in Great Britain? How come you ended up here?
Well, because of Catastrophe. We put our stuff in like short-term storage. We lived in LA and we're happy there, and figured we'd come here, do a few episodes of Catastrophe, and then they'd ask us to leave. And then that didn't happen. And, we had more kids here, and they love their school, and we've been fortunate to make friends and stuff. So we're here. Even though Catastrophe's over, we still live here and plan to continue.
Now, I was talking to Rachel about that. Is Catastrophe over? Is it done and dusted?
Yeah, it is.
People love it, though.
I'm so happy that they do, and that's I also think
because you've chosen to move on, or.
Yeah, we decided because we didn't want to repeat ourselves. If I said anything else about parenting or about marriage in its earlier years, I would be repeating myself, and we didn't want to do that. We were so grateful to get to make the show, and we just didn't want to make any bad episodes.
And so your stand-up, which I saw last night, I watched it last night at home, which is hilarious. Is that the beginning of the transition? Is this sort of decompression for you then? Is that moving on?
No, I mean, because I'd always done stand-up, and I have another stand-up special that came out some years ago, and so...
Not the stand-up. I know you've done stand-up, but the subject matter, as it were.
I don't know, because of course there is some overlap, because even though I might be done with Catastrophe, I'm still a parent, and I'm still married. But yeah, that was a new thing I wanted to do and get out there, and, I think some people in the UK might not even know that I did stand-up, because I came here and just disappeared into Catastrophe, so I did want to say, UK, I do stand-up, and please may I come do it in your house or church or wherever, And
your TV special is at the legendary and beautiful Hackney Theatre. Why did you choose there?
They suggested a few places, and I had enjoyed the Hackney Empire so much. It's so warm, and it's not small, but it feels intimate, and so just the history of it and the beauty of it, and how much I'd enjoyed performing.
And it's bizarre, isn't it? Because it's just on its own in the middle of Hackney. There aren't theatres nearby it. There aren't like a million theatres. It's not on a row of theatres or a street or Broadway or Shaftesbury Avenue. I wonder why it's just there. It's massive, it's big, and it's gorgeous, and it's wonderful, and it's in fantastic condition, and it's much loved and attended.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they probably right now, if they applied for zoning permission to build it, they'd be like, no, we don't know. But since it was been there for over 100 years and Charlie Chaplin performed there, they keep it and people come.
Now, in your special, your TV special, you tell stories about your children, okay?
Yeah.
You tell stories about your children that are hilarious, but sound like they just happened and you're just recounting the stories. Can't be that simple, can it?
No, certainly not. I lie repeatedly throughout the special. There's a lot of stuff that is true, but then there's stuff that I embellish or make funny. Or in the time, it might have been horrific and terrible, the thing that happened. But I try and tell it in a way that is funny. And if that involves blatant dishonesty, I'm happy to do it.
Right,
so yeah, if you hear something and you're like, then I can reserve the right to say, oh, it didn't even happen. Or maybe it did, but
often the simplicity of the stories, you think they are funny. I mean, you got 3 boys.
Yeah.
Okay. They were 1, 6, and 8 at the time of the recording. Are they still that age now?
For a few more days. A couple of them are about to transform into older kids.
That's what happens, isn't it? And you tell these stories. Can we tell the story about your 2 elder boys coming up to you saying, "Dad, is it true we don't have to marry women?"
Oh yeah. So that did truly happen. That's one that just.
Well, it sounded like it might have happened.
Yeah. So they came up to me and they were like, "Daddy, is it true?" They have British accents, which makes me love them more. Or English. What's a British accent? Sorry, everyone listening. They said, "Daddy, is it true that we don't have to marry women?" And I was like, "Yeah." And they were like, "Oh, great." And then they're like, "So," and they went and had a little conference, and then they came back and they were like, "Well, so could we marry men?" And I was like, "Yeah, if you want." And they were like, and then what did they say? They were like, "Could we marry Max and George?" Our friends,
mates,
yeah. And I was like, yeah, I mean, okay, now that one's more tough because they have to want to, you have to want to. Probably it's not going to happen for like 20 years. So I mean, but yeah, you could. And they were like, ah. And then the final one was they asked if they could wrestle. They were like, "Daddy, could we wrestle before bed every night?" And then I was like, well, that's kind of the main draw,
He's so likable. Have you has it always been thus?
No, a lot of people don't like me. I'm glad you guys do.
I don't believe you. Without naming names, give us a description of somebody doesn't like you.
I don't know. I mean, like probably there are probably people in media who don't like me. You know,
but they don't like themselves.
Oh, okay, good,
so
great.
So
yeah,
really
hopefully people who don't like me begin the day not liking themselves, then they move on to me.
Okay,
that's my only wish.
They excuse themselves with you. All right, so Rob Delaney, Jackie is out tomorrow, Friday, 70 the Jan, Amazon Prime Video, and so it's Rob in a sizzling hour of stand-up. Was it an hour at the recording, or are we getting the
a little more?
Bits?
So I did 2 shows that same night at the Hackney Empire, and then they edited it together.
I love that.
I remember talking to the director on like the second cut, and I was being like, so this is just the first show? And she's like, it's a 50% one, 50% the other. I weaved it all together, and you couldn't even tell. That's good.
You can't tell. I mean, you give it all. You start to sweat, don't you? You end up
I sweat so much.
But I love that, because when we get guests in here, sometimes they're so effusive that they end up dripping wet with sweat. Do you remember we've had guests like that, and you can think, who's that? Who's the great Donald Trump man? The brilliant political comedian. Matt Ford ends up. Do you know Matt Ford?
I don't know. I know who he is, but I don't know him.
Don't know anybody who doesn't like Matt Ford. You should work together. But you give it your all, and we get this hour of sizzling comedy. You talk about your kids. You talk about other things. You talk about life. You talk about running. You're a big runner.
Yeah, I love to run. Yeah.
By the canal.
Yeah, I run by the canal, run on the
beautiful
heath,
part.
run
Well,
wherever.
let's not say where you live, but it is a beautiful. I've run down that canal many times myself. You end up on the heath. It's stunning. How far do you run usually?
I usually run by time, so I run between like a half hour. Well, to be honest, I run between 30 and 55 minutes when I run.
How does it make you feel? Are you able
if
to
I don't
switch off?
exercise pretty aggressively 5 days a week, then I get depressed. I'm like addicted to exercise.
Okay, and you never know what you're going to see on a run. Let's not talk about that, but it's in the show, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you can see all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
There's a good 5 minutes on. Well, there's about 30 seconds on running and 4 minutes 30 on what you see, what you can see around Islington when you're running.
Oh, you can see all kinds of things. Yeah.
So you talk about your wife sending you out for some mascara.
Yes.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. Well, the thing is like you want to do a good job. I mean, even like your spouse, the person you know best in the world, you still want to impress them and be like, yeah, I achieved the mission. I brought home the bacon, or in this case, mascara. And I'm terrified of getting it wrong, because then I'll have to live with the consequences of that. And it's not, I mean, my wife is a wonderful person and funny and kind and generous and all that stuff, but not in the stand-up special. I make sure to demonize her and show her worst aspects and mine as well, because that's funny. You don't want to hear that my marriage is good, I can tell you that, off the air, but on the air, it's nuts, So.
Right, quickly then, on that, without giving too much away of what happens to the mascara, and back to relationships and back to Catastrophe, your amazing sitcom, which won countless awards. Why was it called Catastrophe?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's not original. Yeah, it's from Zorba the Greek. A guy asks Zorba, he says, are you married? And he goes, am I married? I got a wife. I got kids. I got the full catastrophe. And Sharon and I heard that, and we were like, yes,
that's funny, isn't it?
That's a good name for a show.
Because it is a catastrophe.
It's a conflagration.
The idea that you're going to get on with somebody, the same person, for 30, 40, maybe 5 or 6 or 7 decades is preposterous.
Can I say something? So I can't use the word catastrophe anymore. So you should follow me around sometime and see when the word would naturally come up when I'm like, oh, that's a big mess, because I don't want people to be like, oh, are you doing an ad for your show? But like sometimes you want to say the word, but I can't anymore. I have to be like, it's a cataclysm, or that's a bad thing, and because I'm afraid to say the word now.
So you're also acting a lot now. You get asked to be in other things, because when you were writing, you've been doing stand-up comedy for a decade and a half ish now.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Something like that.
Yeah, a little longer.
Getting towards 20 years now. But when were you asked to act because you had written something that was funny and you acted in, or do you have history as a trained actor?
Okay, so I do have a history as a trained actor, and I tried to act, but nobody really cared until I made my own show. Right. So, I mean, not like no one in the world, probably including my mom, could name something that I was in before Catastrophe. Yeah. And then because of Catastrophe, when I was like, look, guys, I can do it, people were like, oh, okay, so they were like, oh, he's on 4 seasons of a show, and I'm like, yeah, his own, but still, whatever it takes,
So when you see Kevin Hart, who's hilarious and brilliant in movies, and you see Steve Martin and Richard Pryor,
yes.
Do you think they all wanted secretly to be actors and they couldn't get to be actors, so they became stand-up comedians as their secret way in?
Okay, so some people do that. The ones that you've mentioned are so good at stand-up, though, that I suspect that they just deeply love stand-up, right. And But there's a thing, like, I love to collaborate and do TV and movies and stuff, but then sometimes you just want to be the director, the producer, the actor, the whole thing, and do stand-up, so just go without a net. So I really like to do both because I love to work with other people, but then sometimes I want to be a despot, dictator, psychopath, and just do stand-up.
All right, so a control freak or a perfectionist, depending on which way the wind's blowing.
Exactly.
Okay, now you've been asked to be in some huge movies. There's one, if you travel on the A4 coming into London from Heathrow, you will see billboard after billboard after billboard advertising Bombshell, starring 3 of the biggest names in cinema. So and you're in this movie with these ladies.
Yeah.
So who's in it? What's it called? What's it about?
Okay, Charlize Theron, Margot Robbie, and Nicole Kidman, and directed by Jay Roach and written by Charles Randolph. And what's it about? Roger Ailes. He was the head of Fox News in the United States, and he was a monster and was terrible to all these women for decades. And so a few of them band together and say that's enough and work to take him down, and they succeed. And it was fascinating.
Who do you play?
So I'm not a fiction. I'm like an amalgamation of people. So a lot of the people are real people that you know in the film, but I play Gil Norman, and I'm Charlize Theron's producer, or rather Megyn Kelly's producer, her character. So I'm sort of a sounding board for her, occupying the same kind of gray area with her, because Megyn Kelly, who she plays, is, in my opinion, not a good person, peddles racism on the airwaves and is divisive and all that. But what's bad about her is not that she's a woman. And so the film is very interesting because it takes a look at these women who, might be doing what is, in my opinion, bad stuff, but it's not because they're women. It's just because they're miserable people.
But then because they are women.
Because they're women, they get sexually harassed and taken advantage of and hurt. And that's still wrong, even if I might not agree with you, politically. So it's very interesting to see these people wrestle with their consciousness and see what they want to do. And so it's a very meaty opportunity for a writer, director, actor to work on that.
And the 3 characters that the 3 female leads play, did they all exist?
2 of them did,
right.
But Margot Robbie's character is again kind of an amalgamation of younger women who worked at Fox more recently.
And is that the biggest sort of motion picture you've worked on?
Deadpool 2 was
that was massive.
Was pretty big. Was pretty big.
Excuse me, that was a $1 billion movie. Sorry, I forgot about that.
And then, but you know what? I guess Bombshell, despite all the stars and stuff, it was more in terms of Hollywood scale, more of a lithe, muscular production, but it was amazing. My God, I mean,
what are you watching at the moment on telly?
Yeah, so on telly, gosh, I mean, immediately I'm thinking of Little Women, which I watched last night. That's a movie, not telly.
Did you watch it in Islington? Around there?
I did, yeah. Because I work in Hollywood, I get screeners, so we watched it. So I watched it, and I have to say, Little Women. Well, I watched it with my 8- and 6-year-old boys because my wife had watched it with her friends a couple nights before, and the boys snuck upstairs and looked through a little crack in the door and watched it, and they loved it so much they were like, "Daddy, please watch Little Women with your little boys." And I was like, "With pleasure." And I hadn't wanted to see it. I don't know why.
I was the same.
Right.
I went to see it because people were coming on the show to talk about it.
And then I watched it and I was like, good God, it's
great film.
So entertaining, so funny, so good about grief if you've lost anyone close to you. The way their next door neighbor, Chris Cooper, the father, deals with the loss of his daughter is just staggeringly beautiful, and it's funny. I mean, it's like, I'm thinking it's like as funny as Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and has that many jam-packed comedy scenes, and then it's beautiful. It's an excellent masterpiece.
Okay, that's not telly though.
That's not telly.
So 1917. Have you seen that yet? That's a movie.
Not yet. No.
Okay. Have you seen The Gentleman, the new Guy Ritchie film?
No, I haven't.
These are the big 3 at the moment, of course, and Bombshell's going to be add to that as the 4th. Did you watch Big Little Lies?
I watched the first series of it. I haven't seen the second series.
So you've got all that to go.
Yeah.
See, now I dislike you.
Okay, I understand. That's fine.
Because you have that joy yet to be had in your life.
The Chris Evans Breakfast Show with Sky.